Good morning, and welcome to This Week with Andre Stuckey. I'm Andre Stuckey. Today, we'll take a closer look at some of the biggest stories shaping the headlines this week. From international diplomacy and military conflict to public safety, accountability, sports championships, and the continuing conversation about the meaning of freedom in America. But as always, our goal is not simply to repeat the headlines. Our goal is to examine the bigger picture and ask what these stories really mean for our communities, our country, and our future. Let's begin. The New York Knicks have finally ended a championship drought that lasted more than 5 decades. As I look at the New York Knicks finally ending a championship drought that lasted more than 5 decades, I think the bigger story goes far beyond basketball. This victory is a reminder that success is often built through patience, smart leadership, and a long-term vision. In an era where many teams chase instant results through blockbuster moves and superstar acquisitions, the Knicks built a culture centered on toughness, defense, player development, and accountability. What also deserves attention is the impact the championship can have on an entire city. A title brings excitement to local businesses, increases franchise value, and creates lifelong memories for fans who may have never experienced the championship before. For a city like New York, that influence extends far beyond the arena. To me, the real lesson is that championships are not won in a single season. They are earned through years of disciplined decisions, consistent leadership, and a commitment to building something that lasts. While the Knicks were celebrating the championship decades in the making, another major story this week focused on diplomacy and global stability. When I look at any potential peace agreement between the United States and Iran, I think the real story is not the announcement itself, but whether both sides can sustain the commitments required to make it work. Most people focus on the political headlines, but the larger issue is the impact on global energy markets, international shipping routes, and regional stability throughout the Middle East. If tensions are reduced, it could lower risk to global trade and reduce uncertainty that affects economies far beyond the region. For me, the true measure of this agreement would not be what is promised today, but what is still being honored years from now. From international diplomacy, we move back to the world of sports. As I look at the Carolina Hurricanes winning another Stanley Cup, I think the bigger lesson is about organizational consistency. Hockey's success depends on depth, discipline, coaching, and player development. While fans see players lifting the trophies, years of planning, scouting, and leadership often make those moments possible. This championship also demonstrates how sports can strengthen regional identity, energize local economies, and inspire future generations of athletes. For me, sustained success is rarely accidental. It is usually the result of preparation, smart decisions, and a winning culture. Our next story shifts from championships to accountability. Whenever a public official becomes the subject of an investigation, I believe the process matters as much as the outcome. Too often people rush to conclusions before evidence has been fully examined. Every elected official, regardless of party or position, should be held to the same legal and ethical standards. At the same time, accountability requires facts, due process, and transparency. For me, the real test is whether the investigation follows the evidence, wherever it leads, and whether the public ultimately receives answers and can trust. And this is the case with California Governor Gavin Newsom, who said that he is under investigation from the United States Department of Justice this past week. Another story this week that raised questions about military readiness and national security. A B 52 is not just another aircraft, it remains one of the most important strategic bombers in the U.S. military. Beyond the immediate tragedy and loss of life, this incident raises broader questions about aircraft maintenance, training, operations, fleet modernization, and the challenges of operating aging military platforms. For me, the real story is not only what caused this crash, but what it reveals about readiness, safety, and the long-term sustainability of critical military assets. Technology is also creating entirely new security challenges. When I look at this story, I think the bigger issue is how rapidly security threats are evolving. Drones have become widely available and increasingly capable. What often receives less attention is the enormous amount of intelligence gathering, electronic monitoring, and interagency cooperation required to stop threats before the public ever hears about them. Protecting major events today is no longer just about securing the ground, it is also about securing the skies. As discussions surrounding Iran continue, I think the bigger issue is the balance between diplomacy, deterrence, and long-term strategy. The public debate often focuses on politics while overlooking the broader implications for energy markets, military positioning, regional alliances, and global trade. The real question is whether these efforts reduce the likelihood of future conflict or simply delay difficult challenges. One of the biggest questions surrounding this framework is whether it represents a genuine diplomatic breakthrough or merely a pause in the larger conflict. Reopening the Strait of Hormuz and allowing Iranian oil back onto global markets could affect energy prices, inflation, and economic stability worldwide. The real test will be whether both sides can transform a temporary framework into lasting stability. Framework create opportunities, but they do not guarantee outcomes. The next 60 days may determine whether this becomes a historic agreement or another missed opportunity. Ultimately, success will be measured not by what is signed, but what is sustained. While diplomacy continues to dominate headlines, war continues to reshape the battlefield elsewhere. This conflict has evolved far beyond traditional frontline battles. Drone technology now allows relatively low-cost systems to threaten strategic infrastructure hundreds of miles away. What makes these attacks significant is that they affect more than military operations. They impact fuel production, transportation systems, industrial output, and economic stability. This war is increasingly becoming a contest of endurance, technology, and resources. Back here at home, another story this week focused on the state of American democracy. As the nation approaches its 250th anniversary, I think the largest conversation, the largest conversation goes beyond our founding documents. The real question is whether Americans today feel they have meaningful access to opportunity, economic mobility, affordable housing, quality education, and representation. Democracy should be measured not only by the ideals we celebrate, but by our ability to apply those principles to modern challenges. Our next story centers on accountability. This case goes beyond one celebrity facing tax-related charges. When someone earns millions of dollars, they are often accountants, attorneys, and advisors involved. That raises broader questions about financial oversight and responsibility. At the same time, charges are allegations, not convictions. For me, the story of celebrity Carlos Mencia's tax case charge that was filed this week in federal court highlights the importance of accountability and proper financial management, regardless of fame or success. Public safety remains one of the most important issues facing major cities. When I look at an incident like the Times Square shooting a couple of days ago, I think the conversation goes beyond the gunfire itself. Times Square is one of the most heavily monitored locations in the world. Yet a single violent incident can create panic among thousands of people. Fear itself can create additional dangers as crowds rush to escape and confusion spreads. The bigger issue is understanding why these incidents continue to occur and how communities can reduce both violence and the fear that follows. Finally, today, a story that encourages us to reflect on our nation's history. As I reflect on Juneteenth, I think it's important goes beyond a single day. It reminds us that freedom on paper and freedom in practice are not always the same thing. While emancipation marked a historical turning point, many formerly enslaved people continue to face obstacles in the years that follow. For me, Juneteenth is about understanding the full story of America's journey, recognizing progress, acknowledging challenges, and appreciating the resilience of those who expanded the meaning of freedom for future generations. As we conclude today's program, I would like to celebrate our nation's 250th birthday with by stating one thing that connects many of these stories. Whether we're talking about international diplomacy, military readiness, public safety, democracy, accountability, sports, or in freedom, progress rarely happens overnight. Success requires patience, trust requires accountability, security requires preparation, and freedom requires responsibility. The headlines may change from week to week, but the larger question remains the same. How do we build stronger communities, a stronger nation, and a better future? Those are the conversations worth having. I'm Andre Stuckey. Thank you for watching This Week with Andre Stuckey. Have a nice day, and I'll see you next week.